Good morning, baseball fans. So good to see you again. Welcome to Week 8 of the Major League Baseball Power Rankings. Today is Memorial Day, and for those of you watching in America, I salute the troops. Thank you very much for all of your service to our country. Thank you to all those who give their lives to make America great. And regardless of who's in administration, America is still a phenomenal country and one I'm very blessed to be in. So thank you to all of our troops who gave their lives and all those troops who survived, and to our wonderful military. Thank you so very much. So a little bit of housekeeping here before we get into the actual power rankings here. You may have noticed in the past month I've been using outdated logos for some of the teams because I ordered a couple of options from Amazon and one from eBay. One from Amazon obviously came right away, and I've been using those, but they had outdated icons. If you all don't want to hear all this, feel free to skip right ahead to the first logo, and I'll be happy to go over that with you and get into the power ranking itself. But now that I got, after the shipment never arrived from eBay, I decided, okay, I'm going to go ahead and make my own. So I went ahead and printed out their logos, Miami and Baltimore, new logos here. You'll see them on the boards. And so I attached my own magnets to the back of them. So no more tape here, anybody. It's all clean whiteboard, no problem. Okay, so having gotten into that, let's get into the power rankings. I love it, nice and sticky, no more tape, beautiful thing. The Baltimore Orioles managed to torpedo themselves into the number 30 spot, having gone 1-6 this week with a sweep from the New York Yankees and then only getting 1 out of 2 from Colorado. They are now 10 under 500, and they dropped 1 from last week. They actually managed to play bad enough to take over the bottom spot. Now, it's been no secret that they have been in rebuilding stage. I've been saying that since day one. But when you have the manager saying, not necessarily the manager herself, but paraphrased via commentators, that the manager has commented that he's running a double-A team against major league players. The fact they've won 16 games as a quote-unquote minor league team is actually pretty good. But for a major league team at 10 under 500, they're just not going anywhere. Now, I have Baltimore fan friends, and God love you all. I feel your pain. I realize that the teams that I am known to root for have never been that bad, but I do root for some teams that are that bad. Speaking of teams that I happen to like, number 29, the Miami Marlins, whom after taking care of Detroit, had a phenomenally good week for Miami standards. They won 4 and lost 2 for the first time all year. That, by Miami standards, is phenomenal. They went into Detroit and kicked their butt. And they had a 4-game winning streak coming out of the Detroit series. Then they go into Washington, and then they return to normal. But that 4-game win managed to eclipse the Baltimore Orioles for number 29. They're up 1. They actually had reached, after the Detroit series, as high as like 26-27. But then after they fell late today against Washington, who isn't that great themselves, they sunk back down to 29. At the same time, they didn't fall far enough to go back into 30. They did get 4 wins, and they definitely earned big kudos for getting out of the cellar for the first time since they got into the cellar. They didn't start in the cellar this year. They managed to lose their way there. So, having said that, the number 28 are the Detroit Tigers. Now, they got beat up by the Miami Marlins, and when you're that bad, you should drop, and they did. They dropped 3 spots. They won 2, and then they won. Hang on a second. This fell off. Beautiful. Sorry about that. It's easier than pausing and restarting. So the Detroit Tigers played Miami, got their butts kicked, then went into New York and actually won a game. So I mean, there's just no counting for quality, or you can win any game is basically what I'm trying to get at here. The fact that you can go in against New York, with whom is a superior team, and win, and then go in against Miami, who is obviously a weaker team, and lose, shows that there is parity in the game and you can win any given game. Having said that, Detroit is over 10 below 500 at 19-30. Now, as we progress into this, the nice thing about this week is that, like I mentioned before, we have parity. The largest jump is 5. The largest fall is 4. You had 11 teams climb, 13 drop, and 6 stay the same. I'm reminded that because Detroit is one of those that stayed the same, while these two both went up and one went down. So now we've covered the spread. Alright, so moving along. Speaking of brand new logos, Kansas City coming in at number 27. Kansas City, having just lost 2 games to New York, and having won 2 games since going 2 out of 3 against St. Louis, they're now at 17-34, and they had a subpar week, and they had leads in some of these games, and they just couldn't hold them. They are a team in which needs some work. But they're coming in number 27 here. Good luck to them the rest of the season. You're in a division that is not going to play favorites. When you're going up in a division against the St. Louis Cardinals, the Chicago Cubs, and other teams, Milwaukee. No, that's National League. Sorry, I just named a bunch of National League teams. I apologize. Cleveland, Minnesota, American League teams. You're going to have a hard time trying to compete, especially when you are a below-average team. Coming in number 26. Speaking of new icons, I made 7 new ones total. This is 1, 2, 3 of them so far. You'll see others as we go. Most of these are the same because their icons haven't changed since last year. But this is a nicer version of Kansas City. That is the actual logo, and while it's still the same logo, it's a nicer presentation of it. So anyway, getting back to things. Toronto here is much like Miami and Baltimore in that they are rebuilding. They have a bunch of prospects in there. Vladimir Guerrero's son may be all pop and wonderful, and he might be a good bat, but he is still a prospect coming up from the minors, and he is still learning how the defense. And you've got other kids in there as well that are learning the game at the major league level. They might have good bats, and frankly, Toronto can't do any worse because, I mean, who's below them? Baltimore, who's also rebuilding, and it's not like either Baltimore or Toronto are really going to have much success trying to chase Boston, Tampa, and New York. So the fact that Baltimore gives them the saving grace of not being a cellar of their division at the same time, sitting at 20-32, having gone 2 wins and 5 losses against Boston and San Diego, does not bode well for them. Coming in at number 25 is the San Francisco Giants. They are 2 wins and 5 losses this week against Atlanta and Arizona. They are 21-30. Is there any team in this whole lot here that isn't trying to rebuild? They all have serious needs. Their players are either veterans past their prime, rookies who have no experience, or etc. So, good luck to the Giants throughout the course of the season. As you'll notice, they are the first team mentioned from the National League West, so they are obviously in the cellar of the division. And we're not too far removed from when they had great talent. They still had some of those veterans who just past their prime. So we'll see how they do with the rebuilding. Coming in at number 24, being the second team from the National League East, the Washington Nationals also had a bad week, winning 2, losing 5. They didn't actually have the worst week. That was Baltimore, 1-6. We had one team go 7-0. We'll get to them. They aren't the only team to go undefeated, but the other team had fewer wins. We'll get into that. At 24, the Washington Nationals are 10 games under 500 and at 21-31. When they lost some players like Gio Gonzalez, say what you will about the guy, he's a decent third, fourth pitcher. He wasn't good enough to stay on the Yankees roster this year, but when he was with Washington, he did a solid job. You also had Bryce Harper, whom is an unquestionable talent. Hence the reason he got a 13-year, over $300 million contract from the Philadelphia Phillies. He's very, very good. When you let the players walk that helped you get to the playoffs, you go through some struggles and rebound. They have not moved at all since last week. They're in the same spot, but they had a bad week. 2-5, New York and Miami. New York Mets. Coming in at 23, the Seattle Mariners continue to fall off the radar. This week they're down 2 more from last week, sitting at 23-31. They had an abysmal week at 1-5, which is only slightly better than Baltimore because they played fewer games. Baltimore being 1-6, Seattle being 1-5. Having played the Texas Rangers and the Oakland Athletics, they are just continuing their downward spiral. This is exactly why I was so surprised that they started the season off at number 1. I figured, okay, they happened to win against Oakland in Tokyo before anybody else was playing. This will equal out. Well, the first official week on the 7th of April, I believe it was, they were still number 1 because they were winning their games. Never mind the fact their competition was going to level out as they continued through the season because they were going to play bigger, better teams and worse teams. Well, now we're going into the end of May and they are continuing to spiral down. You know, you got a team that historically, outside of the late 90s rush, when you had some solid pitchers and hitters and you had a dominant team, historically they have always struggled to do well. So they're down a few. Coming in at 22, the Colorado Rockies. Brand new logo. Wonderful. Nice, exciting. It actually reflects the Colorado Rockies logo on their badge now. I realize the CR is still technically Colorado, but this looks nicer in my opinion. Let me know what you think, okay? So, coming in at 22, the Colorado Rockies. They are 3-3 on the week, playing Pittsburgh Pirates and the Baltimore Orioles. Baltimore having gone 1-6 this week. Sorry, Baltimore fans, for keep mentioning that, but I need a bearing for other teams who have played against you. They had a very average week, going 3-3. They did not move this week. They're sitting at 4 under 500, 23-27. They are a team that I thought going into the season showed some promise, but it hasn't actually materialized. And batteries have a lot of potential too, but they're only as good as when you plug them in and they start using their energy. They are just they had a minus 14 run differential this week. I think that shows a lot about the kind of team they have at this point in time in the season. Coming in at 21 to round out the dismal 10, a team's rebuilding and just plain suck or had horrible weeks. The Chicago White Sox are down 1 from last week. They managed to get into the middle row last week, and then they fell right back down to the bottom row. The Chicago White Sox are 5 under 500, having gone 2-5 against Houston and Minnesota. Now, granted, they played some superior competition. I get that, and they won a couple of games. Great job, Chicago, but your goal is to not squeak out a win or two against superior teams, is to become the superior team. I saw the year in which you went up in the World Series, and you had some phenomenal talent that year. You've got your best known talent is Jose Abreu, and he's a good at bat, but he's one guy. Look at Alex Rodriguez with the Texas Rangers. You had a phenomenal talent, a great bat, but when the rest of your team struggles, you can always pitch around one guy. Okay, so they're back down to 21. So that is our bottom 10, and you can say what you will about them. I would welcome your feedback. Let me know what you think about your bottom 10 here. But fundamentally, their performance on the field, look at this. They haven't even scratched 70 points yet. And you got teams cracking 100 points up here. So, I mean, they haven't even cracked 50. So, going on to the middle 10. At number 20, the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim. Now, LA is down 3 from last week, but they're still in the middle row. So the fact that they went 1-5 this week against Minnesota and Texas didn't completely kill them. They had an awful week, but it didn't bottom them out. They still, because I still consider them having a very average team. Bottom average, but average. I could see them fall down here. But I don't really see them spending a lot of time up here this year. It's going to be right now where they are first half of the season is not as important as where they are at the end of the year, but how you do now will dictate how difficult a road or even probable the road is to get up here. And they have not been playing with that caliber with a 1-5 week. They are 500 at 23-28, and they're down 3. Now, when you can't win at home, you struggle. When you go in on the road and you play average balls, what you're supposed to do, 500 balls on the road. It's help. That's the road records it has more of an understanding of not doing well because you're supposed to be dominant at home and they just haven't been. That's what's killing them here. At number 19, Pittsburgh Pirates are down 1 this week. They're still 1 over 500. They had a bad week, going 2 wins and 4 losses against the Colorado Rockies and the Los Angeles Dodgers. Now, Dodgers having a phenomenal year, you can excuse the team from struggling against them. But Colorado is all the way down here. And they're down here because they're having a struggling year. Pittsburgh, I think, is going to probably be in the middle row most of the year, if not finishing up there. They have some good pieces. They also have some pieces they're developing. They're a fun team to watch, but they don't have everything clicking on all cylinders. They are only 1 over 500 at 25-24. I got to see a game or 2 of theirs this week, and I see potential. I just haven't seen it materialize yet. Coming in at 18 is the New York Mets. Now, this is a team, when they made those trades to bring in Robinson Cano, and they already had your Thor and your DeGrom coming off of Cy Young, I really kind of expected them to be competing up here, and it just hasn't happened. But they are up 5 this week, having gone 5 wins, 2 losses against the Washington Nationals and Detroit Tigers. They are still sitting at 1 under 500 at 25-26. But this team that is finding its identity, and they're probably waiting for some injuries to come back so they can start being more competitive within a division. But they are going up in a division where you have Atlanta, Philadelphia. I mean, you have some contenders here. Okay, Atlanta is a team I'm waiting to blossom. They've been touted as the best prospect system for a number of years now. They need to, that talent needs to help major league level, not just tout how good their minor league team is, because while winning minor league championships is always good and fine, it doesn't make headlines. Bring that talent up, and making a huge run here gets everyone's attention. Coming in at number 17 is the Cincinnati Reds. Cincinnati is down 2 this week. They're 5 under 500, 23-28, and they had a subpar week, winning 2, losing 3 against the Milwaukee Brewers and Chicago Cubs. I am not surprised by that because both Milwaukee and Chicago have better teams on paper and have more depth in their lineups. Cincinnati, I remember from the 70s, had dominant teams, but they're still a long way from the 70s. Today's Cincinnati Reds can make things interesting, but when that clutch hit comes up, they don't get it. So they need some work, but they're still interesting to watch. It's still interesting to see how they're trying. They're making an effort. So, coming in at number 16, speaking of superior teams, the St. Louis Cardinals. St. Louis is down 4. They're still over 1 over 500, but they had a subpar week, going 2 wins, 3 losses against the Kansas City Royals and the Atlanta Braves. This is a team that always has the mystique of they're going to win their division because they've gone through so many years of competing for the top rung there. This year, they're still putting it together, still developing that. So they had a negative run differential here, not as horrible as some of these teams down here. This one is just killer. We'll get there, but they're still trying to find themselves. We'll see how they end up towards the end of the year. I don't see them making the playoffs, but I'd be welcome to prove wrong. Coming in number 15, our middle spot here. They are up 4. They are now finally 1 over 500, having had a phenomenal week, going 5 wins and 1 loss against the Seattle Mariners and the LA Angels. This was a week that was designed to help them rebound. You've got 2 divisional opponents, both of which are one trying to find their identity and one just spiraling out of control. This was an excellent week for Texas to take advantage of some divisional games and make a statement that we can still play here. And they did a great job doing it. Coming in at number 14, the Boston Red Sox, whom are coming off of in recent weeks a phenomenal surge, have leveled off this week. They've had a positive week, winning 4, losing 3, and there's 2 games over 500, so considering how bad they were starting the year, they are creeping up. They're up 2, and they climb again. That slow and steady climb over the course of a long season can add up for them when it matters most. In September, when you're trying to play up the division. Right now, they are not there yet, but still relatively early. And I say that because unlike these teams here, with whom early doesn't mean much, they've torpedoed themselves so badly that even if they start spiking and start clicking, it would take a lot to climb out. Boston recognized that early on, and in late April, early May, started getting things together, and they've been climbing up. Not by much each week, but you don't need a lot. You need consistency, and you need to be able to maintain that. Last year, they got off to a phenomenal hot start, and they held on to it. This year, they got off to a rough start, but do not underestimate them, whoever you are, because this team has significant depth to them. They won the World Series last year. They are the defending champions, and they are creeping up. Keep a lookout for Boston. Do not take them lightly. If I watch them play, I have to hold my breath because you don't know what they're going to do. And for Boston fans, they're loving seeing that steady, progressive climb. Would they love to see a 5-0, 6-0, 7-0 week every week? Sure, who wouldn't? But realistically speaking, you take some comfort in watching them climb a little bit each and every week, and I am obviously keeping an eye on them. Coming in at 13, the Arizona Diamondbacks. I love the better logo. It's better than that spiraling snake. I realized that was their original logo when they came in the league, but this just looks nicer with the little egg and the snake tongue. Yeah. They are 2 over 500. They fell 2 this week, having had a bad week. Winning 2, losing 4 against San Diego Padres and the San Francisco Giants. They're both divisional games, and those are the games you need to win. When you have statement series and statement weeks in which you do great, you need to make that count against your division, and they just didn't. Granted, San Diego is not exactly a tough cookie to crack, but San Francisco should have been a walk in the park for you guys. Anyway, this team that, based upon the piece they have, the performance they've shown to date, at 2 or 500, they're probably going to miss the playoffs. They are going to probably finish in the middle of the pack somewhere. But it's still interesting because you never know whether they're going to show up or not any given day. And the games which they show up, they took out New York 2 games in a row, and then they laid an egg afterwards. So, I mean, it's you don't know what team's going to show up. It's always interesting to find out how that unfolds. Number 12, the Cleveland Indians. Thought about changing that to the big C, but I like this icon better. Let me know what you think. Do you prefer the C? Because I can do that. Not a big deal. But for this week, we are Staying with the Indian head here. In Cleveland is down 2 this week. They're 1 over 500, and they had an abysmal week, winning 2, losing 5 against the Oakland Athletics and the Tampa Bay Rays. And this is a team with which I see too much potential in their manager, in their players, in their back office, that they are. I would be surprised if they weren't in the top 10 by September. Are they there now? No. They deserve to be there? No. Terry Francona manages teams in a certain manner in which he doesn't care about individual wins so much as where he's trying to take his team in the big picture. And why that works for him and the teams he runs is the fact that they are always competitive when it matters. So, the fact they had a bad week, yes, it sucks for this week. But what I'm curious to see is how that's going to translate in September when you're in a pennant race. I've got a feeling that Minnesota is going to have them hot in their heels. Coming in at number 11 to finish off the middle 10 is the Oakland Athletics. Now, I had the big A last time, but this looks nicer, and it's also on their helmet, so fantastic. The Oakland Athletics are up 3 this week. They're 2 over 500, and they had the second best week of any team this week, sweeping 5 games against the Cleveland Indians and the Seattle Mariners. Seattle, I'm not surprised about. Divisional game, you want to win those, and they're spiraling. Cleveland, however, the fact that they were able to take out Cleveland, a team with which is going to be in this conversation at the end of the year, for a team that's been very hot and cold all year, Seattle started off higher than Oakland, and during the first week they were in the top 5, but they were number 1. They're still in the conversation a little bit because they're in the middle row here, and they're not spiraling out of control like Seattle is. And when you have the GM and Billy, look at Moneyball, that's the guy, and he's still there managing a team. Do I question some of his moves? Sure, because I don't see logic behind it. At the same time, I also trust his judgment because he knows how to put a team together. Now, you have to figure, if you know how to put a team together, why wouldn't they be as good as other teams such as Tampa, with whom also have horrible budgets and can't keep players? Well, that's as much the GM's fault as much as player development's fault. And the reality is that they are a very average team. I can't see them ever actually winning a championship with what they have, but it's not solely on the players in Oakland. You have a lot of other variables holding them back from achieving their full potential. So we'll see what happens. It's been interesting watching them win some, lose some. Can they challenge for the division? This year I am not seeing their division as unsurmountable, but if they don't get their act together, they're going to be sitting on benches in October. So now we've gotten through our rebuilds on our average teams, finding their identity teams. Now we get to the all-important top 10. Everyone loves a top 10. I love a top 10. When I see them from MLB, I see them from ESPN, I eat them up. I love reading why they think they're that high. But their bias is why I hate them, because they don't take any objective measurements towards ranking teams. We take a very strictly objective reason, and this week in particular, the way the top 10 shows up, there's going to be contestation, there's going to be debate. I get that, I'm expecting it, and I welcome it. Please bring it on, because the metrics used to determine the rankings of the teams are what gives me comfort in why they are where they are here. And now we're in the top 10, and a lot of people probably skip past the bottom 10 because it's not as interesting as top 10. I'll go into the rules here. The points are based upon play on the field. 3 wins for a 9-inning win, 2 points for an extra inning win, 1 point for an extra inning loss, 0 points for a 9-inning loss. Now, what makes that interesting is that when you lose in extra innings, you get a loss on the regular season standings, whereas you still get a point towards your power rankings. So when you have a team that might be a game or 2 a lower record than a team behind them. Let's say, for example, you're 28-30 versus a team that's 30-28, but you're ranked higher. That's because of those overtime losses. They come in handy. Those individual points do come in handy, and if you were able to actually push a team 2 extra innings, whether you win or lose, you still have earned the right to take one of their points from them. That's what caused some interesting findings as we go through the power rankings here. So, starting off, number 10, the San Diego Padres. San Diego, up 3 from last week, 4 or 500, had a very strong week, winning 5, losing 1, against Arizona Diamondbacks and the Toronto Blue Jays. Having won against Arizona bodes very, very well for them in being a National League West contender, especially considering the fact they have to compete against the LA Dodgers, who went to the World Series last year. So when they're reloading and bringing top talent, it helps them in that regard. And of course, also having played the Toronto Blue Jays, which are just meddling and just rebuilding, you have to win those games. You're expected to win them, and you have to win them. It's almost a disgrace and an embarrassment if you don't win them. It's kudos to the team down here, but if you're the team that loses to them, you're just holding your head down like, ooh, we sucked that game. Coming in at number 9, the Milwaukee Brewers. Down 3 this week, but still 5 over 500. Had a subpar week, winning 2, losing 3, playing the Cincinnati Reds and the Philadelphia Phillies. I love watching the National League teams go up against Philadelphia because you got a team that is fully stacked, and a lot of Phillies fans are like, dude, why aren't we number 1? Why aren't we number 1? We got Remuto, we got Harper, we got all these players. We should be phenomenal. On paper, you are. On the field, you still have to win your games. And that goes same for Milwaukee. Milwaukee, I think, could easily take the division this year. They are a stacked team. They have a well-defined team. They may struggle with their pitching from time to time. They may have cold bouts from time to time. But all teams go through that. They're still 5 over 500. They're still in the top 10. You still have a potential MVP in Christian Yelich. You have some good pieces there. And you are, more often than not, showing it on the field. Granted, this week was subpar, winning 2 and losing 3, but you still did not fall far enough to drop off the top 10. Being 6 games giving up 6 runs more than you scored, it's not bode well this week, but I still find you an interesting story for the season. Coming in at number 8, the Atlanta Braves. Having had an above-average week, winning 4, losing 3 against such good Giants and the St. Louis Cardinals, are also 5 games over 500, and they've climbed 1 spot. This is a team in which I don't know a lot of the players because they were prospects before. And they're still identifying, they're finding their identity, but their potential is soaring. They've been high ranked for some time, and it's interesting to see how well they perform. And I am keeping an eye on them. They're the same. They are. Atlanta is up 1, even run differential, but they are coming at number 8. They are winning games and showing what they can do. We'll see how well that turns out as we hit the dog days of summer. Coming in at number 7, Joe Maddon's Chicago Cubs. They were a phenomenal story a couple of years ago when they took out the Cleveland Indians in the World Series, and with Maddon behind the helm, they're never really going to be out of the picture. As you know before, I personally had that single C there. This is a much nicer icon, and this is what they have on their uniforms. I'm much happy with it. They are 10 games over 500. They're up 1 spot, and like Atlanta, they won 4, lost 3 against the Cincinnati Reds and the Philadelphia Phillies. Phillies are interesting how they win game. They lose games they're supposed to win. But Chicago Cubs, I see how their pitchers are still largely the dominant team that they were when they won the World Series. Just they're going through hot and cold streaks at the wrong times. They could be a lot more dominant, but they come in number 7 here, and they're up 1 spot. Coming in at number 6, the Tampa Bay Rays. Down 1 spot, still 11 games over 500 at 30-19. Had a very, very average week, going 3 wins, 3 losses against the Los Angeles Dodgers and the Cleveland Indians. Now, this was a humbling week for them. They kind of held their own a little bit, but they did it against superior teams. Superior is relatively speaking, because fundamentally, Cleveland is not playing superior to them this year, but they are playing superior to most of their division. So I put that in perspective here a little bit. Tampa, having been the creator of the opener and the only team to really use it extremely well, is largely because their team was built around that. You've got Charlie Morton, you've got Blake Snell. They're not going to win every game, but when you have depth to the degree they have in their bullpen, where you can open a game, take a long reliever, and then close it out, has worked phenomenally well for them, to the point where other teams are trying to copy it and just can't do it as well. Any team can win any given game, so can you be successful with it? Yes. As well as Tampa Bay has been? Not so much. So coming in at number 6 is Tampa, with whom is down 1 from last week. They fell out of the top 5. Speaking of the top 5, yeah! Alright. The best teams in baseball this week. This is going to be fun. Coming in at number 5, the Philadelphia Phillies, up 2. They are 10 games over 500 at 31-21, having a very good week, winning 5, losing 2 against the Chicago Cubs and the Milwaukee Brewers. You're talking about teams, the 2 teams that are fighting each other for the Central and are both good teams, and Philadelphia's gone 5-2 against them. That's what you gotta do, Philadelphia. That's what you gotta do. You've got the depth, you've got the pitching, you've got the hitting. Put it all together. For Phillies fans who want to see them at number 1, you did lose 2 games this week. Still a very good week, but if you want to top the upper echelon, 2 things. 1, you gotta have good weeks, which you did this week, and you gotta be consistent with it. When you have average 4 weeks, that kills you in trying to crack the upper echelon. Therefore, you have shown you can do it, and you've done it more often than most, but that's what keeps you out of the top, from climbing above 5. But still, I'm very proud of you. Good job, Philadelphia. Coming in, number 4, the powerhouse Dodgers. Woo! They're actually down 2 this week, despite having a very strong week at 4 wins and 1 loss against Tampa Bay Rays and the Pittsburgh Pirates. But they are sitting a very, very comfy cushion at 34 wins, 18 losses, and leading their division, which they rightfully should. They went to the World Series last year. They're still a powerhouse team. And in the National League, if you want to get to the World Series, you gotta go through LA. Now, some teams will be holding their breath, hoping somebody else takes them out. But here's the thing: if you're not the team to do it, then you can't expect someone else to do your dirty work for you. And they are a very strong team, as the Power Rankings will show you on any list you look at. And you look in the standings, they're also up there. Speaking of a powerhouse, booyah, baby, Houston Astros. They are down 2 this week because they had a lower quality week than last week. Last week they just did phenomenal, going on that 6-game win streak. This week they leveled off a little bit, winning 4, losing 3 against the Chicago White Sox and the Boston Red Sox. When you go against the 2 Sox and you have a subpar week, I shouldn't say subpar. They are technically over 500 for the week, 4-3, but by Houston standards, subpar. Remember I mentioned by Miami standards how they had a great week by Miami standards? We're talking about the Houston Astros here. When you lose a game, that's below Houston standards, okay? You've got the whole lineup, the whole rotation. Verlander, Bregman, Altuve, the whole team. This is a team that is going to be there in the postseason. That's almost a foregone conclusion. Whether or not they can win get to the World Series remains to be seen. But if I had to put my money on any team, this team I definitely pick for the American League Championship Series, no questions about it. Especially if they're able to keep playing at this level at the end of the year. They are a powerhouse just like LA and just like Philadelphia wants to be. I don't go beyond the 5 for powerhouses, because if you're a powerhouse, you are good enough to be in the top 5. Am I right or wrong? Huh? Let me know. Coming in at number 2, the Minnesota Twins. Minnesota has had a great week, winning 5, losing 1 against the LA Angels and Chicago White Sox. Teams in which they are definitely superior on paper and on the field. But the reality of the matter is, you still have to win the games, and they did. They won 5 this week. And no matter how many games you play, if you win 5 of them, you had a really good week. Twins fans should be very proud of their team. They're 35-16. They're one of the best teams in the league. And they are right now playing at a level which will help them easily take the division. Taking the division will get you to the playoffs. What you do with it from there in a short series is anyone's game. But for this week, you had a great week, and you are absolutely listed among the powerhouses of the week. Speaking of phenomenal weeks, the best week of all teams on the board, 7 wins, 0 losses, swept the board. The New York Yankees. They are up 3 from last week at 34-17, having swept the board against the Baltimore Orioles and the Kansas City Royals, including winning last Sunday's game as well, taking out, I believe it was Tampa Bay, to take 2 extras from that series. And yes, you can say what you want about the fact that they played bad teams, but I will say that against any team on this board, if you want to be a contender, if you want to be a powerhouse, if you want to win the World Series, you have to win the games you're supposed to win. When you're going against subpar teams, you have to win those games. Now, granted, it would have been absolutely embarrassing to see the New York Yankees lose against Baltimore. With all the love and respect in the world to Baltimore fans, I'm sorry. But the reality of the matter is, if you would have won, it would have been champagne, yay, we beat a powerhouse, we beat the Yankees, yay, but you didn't. New York took care of business, they swept the week, they won the games you're supposed to win. Now, granted, because they were lower level teams, you get the kudos and the champagne and the hurrah this week. What you do with it will dictate how your season unfolds. It is still May. Granted, it's pre-All-Star break. This is where you lay the foundation for your season, because you don't want to be looking back in September and saying, we should have won that game in April or May. This is May. Are you taking care of business? This week, these teams took care of business. These teams did not. Granted, by Miami standards, they had a great week, but that's by Miami standards. Good luck to you guys. So, I want to know what you guys think. So, please leave your comments your thoughts and opinions in the comments below. I would love to read through them and comment back to you as well and enjoy some banter with you. I love you all. Thank you all so much for watching this video. If you just happen to have come across this video while surfing the web or on YouTube, please feel free to like and subscribe. It sincerely helps the channel, especially subscribe. We really would love to see you be part of the family and enjoy these every single week. So, enjoy the Memorial Day weekend. Enjoy Sundays and Mondays games. Please pay tribute to your veterans. Salute them, thank them for the service, and be sure to give them the due respect they deserve. They put their lives on the line to serve this country, And regardless of what the administration, how they use them, they've still volunteered to defend our country against enemies, foreign and domestic. And I give you all the kudos, all the applause, and all the respect in the world for everything you do. Both those are still actively serving and those who have given their lives for our country. Thank you so much. Happy Memorial Day to everybody, or technically tomorrow, but for the purposes of this week, happy Memorial Day to all veterans. Thank you so much. And to all fans of this channel, thank you so much for watching. Have a wonderful week. See you next time.